Greetings from Mesa View United Methodist Church of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We hope this message will be meaningful and relevant to your life and your relationship with God. We invite you to join us for worship on Sunday mornings. Our traditional service is at 8:30 a.m. and at 11 a.m. we gather for contemporary worship. More information may be found at our website, mesaviewumc.com. Now may you be blessed through the reading and hearing of God's holy word.
Our gospel reading is Mark 2:13 through 22. Jesus went out again beside the sea. The whole crowd gathered around him, and he taught them. As he was walking along, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were also sitting with Jesus and his disciples. For there were many who followed him. When the scribes of the Pharisees saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, they said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" When Jesus heard this, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have come not to call the righteous, but sinners." Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and the people came and said to him, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Jesus said to them, "The wedding guests cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, can they? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast on that day. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it. The new from the old, and a worse tear is made. And no one puts new wine in old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost. And so are the skins. But one puts new wine in fresh wineskins." Our Hebrew scripture reading is Hosea 1:1, and then chapter 2, verses 14 through 23. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, son of Beeri, in the days of the kings Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah of Judea, and in the days of King Jeroboam, son of Joash of Israel. "Therefore, I will now allure her, and bring her into the wilderness, and speak tenderly to her. From there I will give her vineyards, and make the valley of Angkor a door of hope. There she shall respond as in the days of her youth, as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt. On that day, says the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal. For I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, and they shall be mentioned by name no more. I will make for you a covenant on that day with the wild animals, and the birds of the air, and the creeping things of the ground. And I will abolish the bow, the sword, and the war from the land. And I will make you lie down in safety, and I will take you for my wife forever. I will take you for my wife in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will take you for my wife in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. On that day I will answer, says the Lord. I will answer the heavens, and they shall answer the earth, and the earth shall answer the grain, the wine, and the oil. And they shall answer Jezreel, and I will sow him for myself in the land. And I will have pity on Lo-ruhamah, and I will say to Lo-ami, you are my people, and he shall say, you are my God.
This past Monday, January 9th, which happens to be my brother's birthday, we also sort of recognized an unusual event in the calendar year, and that is that I read that more people commit marital infidelity on January 9th than any other day of the year. I don't know how they figured that out, but that's what I was reading. And I thought that was rather appropriate for today because Hosea, the first of the 12 minor prophets we encounter, deals with infidelity. The breaking of relationship, and in particular the breaking of the covenantal relationship with God. Of course, when we think about breaking of vows, one of the first things that comes to mind is breaking of marriage vows. And that is one of the images that Hosea is known for, is comparing God's marriage to Israel as a metaphor for the covenantal vows between God and the people. But marriage vows are not the only vows we can break. There are other ways that we can break relationships. Sometimes the vows that we have are spoken, and sometimes they're just sort of implicit, like the things that we learn that we should and should not do with our children. Jimmy Kimmel likes to push those boundaries a little bit, and so he has this running gag at Halloween where he asks people to videotape them telling their children that they have eaten all of their Halloween candy. So take a look.
Mommy and I last night, we were watching a movie, and we ate all of your candy.
They ate all of your Halloween candy, and there's no more left.
I ate it all. Yep.
Oh, I just wanted to let you know I ate all your candy. I ate all your Halloween candy.
I ate all the Halloween candy. You guys, we're really sorry. That wasn't very nice. You don't like us anymore? Was that...
We ate all your Halloween candy.
We're sorry. Are you mad at us? You don't want to look at me?
No.
Oh.
Next time we go trick-or-treating, you don't do that, okay? Well, I'll have to spank your butt and put you in your woman tummy.
Now, I am pretty sure that Jimmy Kimmel is going to hell for having parents do that, and maybe I'm going to hell for letting you show that, but you all laugh, so you're going to be there right along with me. But that breaking of relationship between parents and their children in that moment, and the responses that the children have, apparently falling on your face or falling over is when the appropriate response, I believe are appropriate for looking at this message on Hosea. We know very little about the prophet Hosea. We are told in the opening of the passage that he is the son of Beeri, who we know nothing about. That's a common refrain at the beginning of prophetic writings. And then we're given a list of the kings who were in power during his prophetic career, which lasts roughly from the year 750 to 724 BCE, which is a fairly tumultuous time for the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom. Remembering that after the death of Solomon, Solomon and David had ruled over a united monarchy. After Solomon's death, it's divided into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom, known as Israel, which contains the 10 northern tribes, such a much larger geographic area. And then the southern kingdom, known as Judah, has two tribes, but it also contains Jerusalem in the southern kingdom. While there are several prophets who prophesy to the northern kingdom, Hosea is the only one we believe is actually from the northern kingdom and not from Judah. And outside of the book of Job, Hosea is the hardest book for translators to come up with an English translation. Not only is the text obscure and difficult in the Hebrew, it's also obscure and difficult in the Greek, which is known as the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament. And since it's believed, since both the Greek and the Hebrew are difficult, it's believed believe the difficulties arise not from mistakes or something has happened through the transmission of the manuscripts through millennia, but instead that what we see in the book of Hosea in the original Hebrew is a different dialect of Hebrew than what we see in the rest of the Bible. Now, I think this is pretty cool, because what it says to us is that we know that there's religious differences between the northern and southern kingdoms, obviously a political difference with a boundary line there, but there's probably also a dialectical difference. They're speaking different forms of Hebrew in the northern and southern kingdoms. It's sort of like George Bernard Shaw's quote that Americans and British are people separated by a common language. That there's something distinct about what's going on in both kingdoms that we can pick up just from seeing the Hebrew that we find in the book of Hosea. Now, Hosea is broken up into 3 separate sections that have a sense of prophecy or something that Hosea is saying from God to the people. And then each section is ended by a proclamation of hope. That was part of the message we heard from this morning's reading, is part of the message of hope that Hosea is giving. The she that's being referred to there is Israel. And so we have chapters 4 to 11, which have a series, 1 to 3, which have a series of judgments against Israel for being unfaithful. And we get this metaphor about God being the husband to Israel as the bride. And Israel as the bride has gone off and been unfaithful to God as the husband. Chapters 4 through 11 give another series of oracles. This time the metaphor is God as a parent in relationship to a rebellious son. In particular, if you read it, it's like a teenager living in God's house. And how is God dealing with this teenager who wants to do whatever he wants to do? And then chapters 12 through 14 combine both metaphors of a marriage and a parent-child relationship, and also about the coming destruction of Israel, which happens in 721. Hosea does not appear to be around. At least we have no record of anything for him when Israel is finally destroyed. And as I said, each of those sections includes proclamations about judgment and about punishment and about destruction, but then end in these notes of hope, of God calling the people back into relationship. Now, while there are lots of different issues that Hosea tackles, ways in which the people have gone astray, including growing economic problems with an increasing gap between the wealthiest in Israel and the poorest, so he can speak to us in our own time. Hosea's biggest problematic witness surrounds political and religious idolatry. The ways in which Israel has been unfaithful to God and broken the covenantal vows they have taken to have one God and one God only, which is where that metaphor of marriage plays such a prominent role. So far as we can tell, Hosea is the first person in the Hebrew Scripture to use that image as a metaphor of God as the bride and Israel or Judah, God as the groom and Israel or Judah as the bride. And to represent that metaphor as a reality, God orders Hosea to marry a woman who is known to be unfaithful. This is one of those times in which prophets act out their prophetic witness. Now, in the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, which is what we use, the translation we use, it says that he is to marry a wife of whoredom. Other translations use the word prostitutes. But the Hebrew word here doesn't imply necessarily it's a woman who's engaged in this professional trade, but instead somebody we would say is promiscuous. Now you might think that Hosea would object to God saying, go out and marry a woman who is promiscuous, that Hosea's family would object to this relationship. But if that happens, we don't have any record of it. Instead, Hosea goes out and marries Gomer. And in their relationship, they have 3 children that are born to them, although only one of them, we are told, is the child of Hosea. Presumably, therefore, the other 2 are from her committing adultery in the surrounding communities. So not only does God tell Hosea, marry a woman who's going to cheat on you, But God then tells Hosea what he is to name the children. The first son is named Jezreel. All three of these names are in that passage we heard this morning. The first son is named Jezreel. Jezreel is a valley in Israel, known as a very fertile area, but it had gone dry, part of the judgment God has made against them. It is also the valley in which the original kings of Israel were raised up. And so by naming this son Jezreel, God is saying that he is going to destroy the house of Jehu, the ruling family of Israel. Next, Gomer gives birth to a daughter. Again, Hosea is not named as the father in this situation. And Hosea is told to name the girl Lo Ruhama, which means have no pity. God will have no pity on the Israelites for what they have done. And then a third son is born, also not named as a child of Hosea's, but he is told to name that son Lo Ami, which means not my people. In opposition to what we hear in Scripture, God says, you are my people and I am your God. Now God is saying, you are not my people. You have gone astray. I'm cutting you off. This is a total rebuke of Israel, breaking of the covenant. But God is saying, it's not me who has broken the covenants. The covenant has been abandoned and broken by the Israelites. They are the ones who have gone off and worshipped other gods. In this case, Baal was the chief god of the ancient Near East. They are the ones who have put their trust in military leaders and military might to save them. They are the ones who have put their trust in political leaders to save them. They are the ones who put their own trust in their wealth and possessions, who have claimed that all the good things that have happened, that when Jezreel was fertile, that it was all because of their work, rather than putting their trust and allegiance and claiming the good things that are happening to God. They said it's all about us, or it's all about Baal. Now, we often have this image of God being unmoved. That is, after all, we say that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yet the image we see of God in Hosea and in many of the prophets is a God who is deeply affected by what we do and by what's happening to us. And so God expresses anger and jealousy, and God expresses anguish and grief that come in this broken relationship. He's like that little boy who says, I don't want to look at you anymore. And the little girl who says, I'm going to smack your butt and send you to your room for a time. You've broken relationship. There was a trust thing going on there. Remember that? And it's not there anymore. God is hurt by the behaviors that are happening in Israel. And we are told that the people have gone astray because they don't know God. That verb of knowing there is not intellectual knowledge. It's a verb of intimacy. When we talk about somebody knows somebody biblically, that's the knowing that's being talked about, a sense of intimacy, a deep relationship between God and the people that has been broken. And I think most of us have been in a situation where a trust like that has been broken for us. We've been in the place of the victim, and we know the grief and the pain and the heartache and the anger that comes out of that. When another person has shattered that trust, that covenant that we thought we had. And the same thing is shown here with God. So God makes this accusation of adultery against Israel. And in some particularly harsh language, especially at the beginning of chapter 2, God lays out a punishment for Israel as the adulterous woman, which at the very least will lead to public shaming, being stripped naked in public, and at the worst leads to death. Now, these passages have been used throughout the years to justify abuse, domestic abuse, giving a man the right to abuse his wife. and giving churches the excuse not only to support that action, but to tell women to go back into those situations and to examine their own behaviors to find out what they had did to make the man beat them, that they are responsible for what had happened. Because after all, just like Israel, they must have done something wrong. She was asking for it. So first, as we think about that, domestic abuse is not acceptable. Violence of any form is not acceptable, but violence against intimate partners also is a violation of that covenant. It's a breaking of relationship. And to say that these scripture passages support that is to misuse and abuse these passages. And I can say that for several reasons. The first is that our understanding of marriage and of gender relations is radically different than it was at the time that Hosea is prophesying. When Hosea is talking about marriage, it looks nothing like what we understand marriage to be. Marriages were arranged, and there was a strong power dynamic. The man is clearly in control over top of the woman. They don't look the same. So when we're thinking about Hosea giving this metaphor of a marriage, it's not the same. And secondly, we have to understand that it is a metaphor. Metaphors are not to be taken literally. When Shakespeare says all the world is a stage, that's a metaphor. Does that mean that everywhere we go is a stage? Do we have to look for stage lights? And is it a wood stage or is it made out of some other material? Well, no, because it's a metaphor. It's giving us some understanding about human behavior, how we work in the world and interact with each other. But as soon as we start to take it literally, it breaks apart. It no longer functions. So we have to see this metaphor of God and Israel in that same way. It's a metaphor that takes us deeper into understanding the relationship that God has called us to be into, this one of knowledge, of intimacy between God and us, but also to understand the metaphor, the very nature of that analogy. But that's where this then applies to us. Adlai Stevenson, two-time candidate for president, said, "Some of us worship in churches, some of us worship in synagogues, some of us worship on golf courses." That is, there are lots of different altars where we worship. And some of them can become our gods. We all have things that pull at our allegiance. We have things that distract us from the primacy of God. We have things that claim our passion and priorities in our lives. In a new book on this very issue, entitled "The Altars Where We Worship," the authors highlight 6 areas that they sort of identify, the altars that we worship on, that are our gods in America. And they are the body and sex, big business, entertainment, politics, sports, and science and technology. These are the places, they say, where people gather to give meaning to their lives. And we follow a sports team, and we dedicate everything we have in following them and knowing everything about them. We paint our faces and take off our shirts in sub-zero temperatures to cheer them on. That is our passion. We worship at that altar. We worship at the altar of big business or of capitalism or of money. We believe that politicians will redeem us, politicians will save us, or the courts will save us. We give credit for the things in our lives as if we have done all of it and that nobody else, certainly not God, has been involved in it. And we spend much more time binge watching anything than we do in getting to know God. The issues that Hosea raises about Israel are unique to the time, and yet they also speak to us in our own time. And we're all guilty of that, because in 4 weeks I begin worshiping at the altar of baseball. Spring training begins. Unless you think that you're immune to this, that passage we heard this morning from the Gospel of Mark, Jesus calls Levi. And he says, "Follow me." What does Levi do? He follows him. He drops everything he's doing, and he follows Jesus. The same thing when Jesus calls the first disciples. They're mending their nets on the beach, and Jesus says, "Come, follow me." And they drop everything and they follow. They don't give excuses about why they, oh, well, I have to mend this. Let me put my boat up. I have to go home and tell them where I'm going. Nothing happens. They drop everything and follow. And so if God was to say to you, "Follow me," and this is where we're going, what would you say? Would you drop everything and go? Or would there be reasons why we'd say, "Well, I can't really. The mortgage payment is coming up. I do have to pay that. And the girls have to go to school on Tuesday. Who's going to take them to school? And we did have that other thing that we had to do this weekend. I have to clean out the garage." We put up all these obstacles, and they can become our gods. They can become the places where we find meaning and importance. They can become the places where we put primary concern. So it's not that we can't have other interests or other passions. We can have things that are in our lives, but God says you can't have any other God before me. And Jesus says you can't serve two masters because you'll love one and hate the other. You can only have one master. So who is going to be the master of our lives? Where is our sense of priority? Where are we going to pledge allegiance? Is it to God or is it to something else? Is it to God's kingdom or is it to something else? Where do we express and find ultimate concern and identity and meaning in our lives? In God or in something or someone else? Hosea is not calling the people here, not calling us to recapture some old-time religion. He's not saying, if only we could go back to this time when everything was great. Hosea is actually not a religious traditionalist. He is a religious radical because he is pushing them to true monotheism. One God and one God only. One master and one master only. One sense of purpose and one sense of purpose only. To say that our primary responsibility is to love the Lord our God with all of our hearts and all of our mind and all of our strength and all of our soul, with all that we have and all that we are. Not just part of it, all of it. And when we go astray from that, when we commit idolatry, which is worshiping someone or something else other than God, that it pains God because it breaks that relationship that we have pledged to have with God. Breaks that relationship that God has called for us as people, as a church, as a nation, as a world. Now, in many ways, our understanding of marriage now works better in that metaphor for God and us than it did in the ancient world, because now it represents both symbolically and physically a relationship that we choose to join, that we choose to be in. That we say, we're going to be with this person and consciously knock out everybody else. This is where my relationship will be. This is my covenants. This is the person I am going to know. So where have we broken that relationship with God? Because we've all done it. And so we have to look, where have we broken, where have we put our primary concern into something or someone else? And then we need to turn around. To say that it is in God that we find our meaning and purpose, our ultimately concern. And anything else, whether it happened in the past or the present or in the future, which seeks to claim that allegiance from us, which seeks to give us some greater meaning or purpose for our lives, is idolatry. But then comes that message of hope. That God says, I was really, really mad when I found out about this. When I saw it happen, I was mad and I was pained. And I wanted to end that. Say, get out of the house. I'm going to spank your butt and send you to your room for a timeout. But then God says, but I want to be in relationship with you. I want to be in relationship with you. And so I'm willing to forgive you and to call you back into relationship with me. And so in that second chapter of Hosea that we heard this morning, we hear that God's love and God's grace will have the final word. And as we think about our prophecies fulfilled or not, we see the beginning of that fulfillment coming to us in the person of Jesus Christ. Because God so loved the world that he sent us his Son. He says, I know that you've gone astray. I know that you've worshipped other gods. But come back to me. And I will renew that covenant. But the covenant will be renewed not just with the people, but the covenant will be renewed with all of creation. So we need to remember that when we break that covenant, it hurts not just God or somebody else that we've broken that relationship with, but it hurts the creation. And that God will abolish war. God will call us to stop putting our trust in our military mights and in our political leaders. And that God will restore justice. A call we hear as we remember the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King on this weekend. And that bounty will come to the earth and the valley of Jezreel will be filled again. And so we can see we are not there yet because we still have war. We still have cries for justice. But we're moving forward in our covenantal relationship. And God says the valley of Jezreel, the name of Hosea and Gomer's first son, the valley of Jezreel will be filled with abundance again. And that God will say to Lo Ruhamah, whose name is without pity, God will say, I have pity. And God will say to Lo Ami, which means you are not my people, God will say, I am your God, and you are my people. That the names of Hosea's children, which had been proclamations of judgment against the people, will be changed into images of renewal and hope. So are Hosea's prophecies fulfilled? Not yet. They've been begun. But we still live in that sense of brokenness. Brokenness with God and brokenness with each other. And yet, the promise is still there. God says, don't put your trust in your job, or your house, or your car, or your income, or politicians, or movie stars, or sports teams. Because they don't give you ultimate meaning and purpose. Come back to me. Not just with your head, proclaiming that you know God. Come back with your hearts to know me in the sense of intimacy and relationship, like that comes in a marriage. And come to give praise and glory with all that we are and with all that we have and with all that we do. Come back to me, God says, and I will be your God and you will be my people. I pray that it will be so, my brothers and sisters. Amen. And I actually left out a portion of my sermon, which was the conclusion of that video from Jimmy Kimmel and forgiveness. So if you play that for us,
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Do you still love me?
Of course I do.
We ate all of your Halloween candy. It's all gone. We're really sorry. Are you mad at us?
No. How about tomorrow? I'll bring my bag and we'll get some more candy.
Do you forgive us?
Yeah. I'm kidding.
No, I ate it all.
Well, I'm not mad. I'm not happy, but I still love you.
Oh, you still love me. You're not happy
Yeah.